Okay, now that we've imported all of our photos from our camera, let's take 1 minute and do a quick overview on how we can make our photograph look a whole lot better using a couple of simple adjustments with Picasa. We're going to look at tuning, straightening, and sharpening. 3 different items that you'll probably do a whole bunch of times on all your photos, and it's a great idea to do this before you upload them to Keystone. So the first thing we'll do is we'll select a typical property photo, and let's make some adjustments. The first thing that I'll point you to is the beanie down in the right-hand corner, lower right-hand corner in Picasa. That displays something called a histogram, and a histogram is a great technique to decide if your photos are bright enough, too bright, or too dark. The histogram shows the levels of brightness and darkness that there is in the photograph. You can go into a whole bunch of detail with it, but essentially all you need to know is that there are 2 halves. The left half of the histogram shows all the dark parts of the photograph. The right half of the histogram shows all the bright parts of the photograph. We see that the chart is real high in the dark areas, but there's almost no areas in our photograph. So we're going to go over to the Tuning tab in Picasa and tune our photograph so that our histogram shows that we have an equal distribution of dark parts and light parts. So by keeping that histogram up on the screen, we'll first add some fill light under the Tuning tab. We'll add some fill, and we see that as we slide that slider up, the histogram is now tending towards the middle. So we've got now a good distribution of tone within the middle of the photograph. The highlights will just add brightness just to the brightest section. So you see it slides more of that detail over to the right. And moving those 2 tabs, you'll see that now we've lost a little of the shadow. There's not quite so much distribution on the shadow. So sometimes you'll need to add a little of that shadow back in. Now we've got a nice distribution all the way across our photograph. Let's hide that beanie by clicking the graph again. And you can see now that our photograph is much brighter. That's going to make it look really good in Keystone. So let's just compare. Here's what it was before, and here's what it is after. Great. 2 other things real quick. Sometimes you'll notice, and this picture is actually pretty good, but sometimes you'll notice that the picture tends to lean towards one side or another when you didn't hold the camera absolutely perfectly straight. You can fix that in Picasa by clicking the Basic Fixes tab, then the Straighten button. A grid is overlaid, and you can slide that picture back and forth to make sure that those walls are all perfectly straight up and down. All your window lines are straight up and down. So I usually like to put a grid right next to one of the lines towards the center and make sure that all of those lines are as parallel as we can make them. We click Apply, and now our photograph has been straightened. So now it'll look really good. Last thing we'll do is we'll click over on the Effects tab, and the very first effect is called Sharpen. If we click the Sharpen, it's just a 1-click effect. You won't see it too well in the YouTube video, but if we zoom in, we can see that the Sharpen, after you tune and resize, sometimes you'll add just a little tiny bit of softness to a photograph. So by clicking Sharpen, you'll be able to bring some of that detail back. So you see, we can actually see that there's some people in that photograph inside the cabinet. Great. So sharpening, straightening, and tuning. Remember that histogram? And using those 3 techniques, you can fix a whole bunch of problems with your photographs and really make them look sharp when you upload them to Keystone. Thanks for watching.